You will beware. You're in for a scare.
We have returned. Yep, everybody appreciated that. What is thy hype train? We are lame in the brain. Well, allow me to introduce you to hype train. So, anytime anyone does something crazy like subscribes, gives subs, resubscribes, donates bits, or I'm sorry, donates. No. If anyone subscribes, resubscribes, does a gift subscription, or cheers bits, there's what's called a hype train. And when everyone gets on the hype train, the number one person who cheered, bit cheered, who gifted, who subscribed to the most, gets a train next to your name for an entire month. You get immortalized in my leaderboard as the most hype person to ride this train. Now I know there's someone in this audience who cares about trains. That person may be tempted to be here the next hype train. previous hype train riders so they become Morgan Freeman. It is true. You do become the Morgan Freeman. It is true. Whoops, forgot to have that. The howling and whatnot. But yes, they become Morgan Freeman for 1 month, precisely 4 weeks. Sadly, no one became Morgan Freeman tonight, but there is always next time. Which brings me back to tonight. We are going to be having I hereby gather the Midnight Culturalists so that we may embark on an adventure of horrific proportions. I must now move us to our new humble abode. Give me but a second. I missed my chance to become Morgan Freeman. Yes. If you had cheered but 100 bits, in addition to your resubscription, that I'm in much appreciation of, you would have been the Morgan Freeman of the month. But fear not, because the month is nearly over, and a new month is soon to be upon us. But there we go. I shall commence with the festivities for tonight. For we have Tales of Terror. We have but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 10 options. I'm now going to put in the chat, which I hope you guys can see. Where is my... Okay, here we go. I now am asking which option. started the poll. Let's go back in time. Rewind the tapes. Yes, we shall rewind the tapes. The tapes need to be rewound and resubmitted to Blockbuster. That's what I'd say if I was the one to rewind the tapes. I'm also going to have this right here with the Tales of Terror. Hopefully it's not too loud. I might lower the ambiance as we're all in my humble manor for the night. Why I invite everyone from the midnight culturalists, as I've dubbed thee. We are gathered here today to choose options between 1 through 5. So if you cannot participate in the actual poll on the stream, submit your number between 1 and 5. What is thy response? I voted, but I just say number 5. Like Mambo number 5. Perfect. It has begun. I shall now look at the poll and begin our night of terror. Oh, 4 and 5 were voted on each one time. Now, here's the question. The next question I pose. Who voted for 4? I don't think it was Team Buffins, because they voted Mambo number 5. In this, they meant to say Mambo number 4. Whoever voted number 4 doesn't count. Well, good. He buried himself out. Perfect. Perfect. Alright. Then we shall go with Mambo number 5. To be followed. He should have remained silent. Then we shall go with whatever is less than Mambo number 5. begin our tale. Our tale is called The Knight in Screaming Armor. This is a tale about Team Puffins. So listen closely as I read from the Book of Virtue. Prepare yourself, Team Puffins, to meet the Knight in Screaming Armor. Your cousins are coming to visit from England. They're bringing something with them, a little surprise. It's an old suit of armor from your uncle's collection. It has a really cool battle axe and a shield. And it has something else too. Orders to destroy you. You see, there's an ancient curse that was placed upon your family, and the knight is here to deliver it. And that's not all. A ghastly-looking gardener with 3 heads, mud-slinging monsters made of goo, and some very nasty sheep are all headed your way. This scary adventure is all about you, Team Puffins. You decide what will happen, and you decide how terrifying the scares will be. We will then follow the book's instructions, and you, Team Puffin, shall make choices. If you make the right choice, you will defeat the knight in screaming armor and escape its horrible curse. If you make the wrong choice, beware. Who would have known a 4 and a 5 could determine a fate so great? Indeed, indeed. Let us begin our trial. Now, Team Puffins, take a deep breath, cross your fingers, and give yourself goosebumps. Pip pip ta ta, jolly good, tally ho, and all that rot. Your dad exclaims, Team Puffins. Dad, you please. You plead, please. So sorry. He apologizes in his best British accent. We just want your cousins to feel quite at home now, don't we? It's not every day we have visitors from England. It's been over a year since we've seen them. Jolly good, ta-ta, pip-pip, your dad says again. Yes, your mom adds. Your Uncle Will is giving lectures at several important American museums. So Kip and Avery will be staying with us a whole week. Isn't that terrific? You only half agree. Kip Saxton is your age. Sometimes he complains too much, but mostly, he's a pretty cool kid. His 15-year-old sister is another story. Avery acts like she's queen of the world, you say. She can be a royal pain. Oh, you'll have fun, your dad assures you. Uncle Will says Kip and Avery are bringing a big surprise with them. Surprise, you ask? What surprise? Before your dad can say another word about the surprise, the doorbell rings. They're here, your mom calls from the front hall. She opens the door at the airport shuttle van pulls away. Your cousins are standing in the doorway. You haven't changed a bit, your mom declares, as she hugs Abby and Kip. I hope that's not true, you mutter. Your tall, blonde cousin is already staring past you and into the mirror behind you. Hi, you manage to say to her. Abby primps her long golden curls before she answers. Oh, hi, she says, as she puts her hair about 100 times. I don't like surprises, unless it's from Taco Bell. Oh, these are anything but Taco Bell surprises. Still, the same old Abby, you have to admit. Forget her, someone says, laughing. It's Kip. Can you give me a hand? We've got more stuff to bring in. Your sandy-haired cousin moves back out into the front step and points to 2 huge wooden crates. The crates are taller than your dad. What the? You start to say, Team Puffins. Artifacts, your dad chimes in. Uncle Will is coming here next week to lecture at the Medieval Museum downtown. I told him we'd store some exhibits here until he arrives, but I never expected anything this big. These crates will have to go in the garage. What's in the crates anyways, you ask Kip. 2 suits of armor, Kip says. That's what's in the crates. They're really old, from the 15th century. We call one of them the Evil Knight. It's been with the Saxton family forever. The other suit was Sir Edmund Saxton. He's our great, well, you get the picture. The crates are on wheels. You, Kip, and Avery, and your dad pull them down the driveway to the garage behind your house. You notice a label on one of the crates. Hey, look at this, you cry. You read the label aloud. Beware this dark and evil night, cursed still from long ago, until a good knight fights for right. This night brings misery and woe. It's kind of spooky, says Team Puffins. No, don't read that aloud, Kip cautions too late. It's an evil curse on the whole Saxton family. A curse? Team Puffin laughs. You don't believe in curses, do you? Sure I do. And you should too, if you know what's good for you, Kip whispers. I guess you've never heard that tale. The tale? What tale? Asks Team Puffins. The legend of the curse of the knight in screaming armor, Kip answers. Years ago, an evil sorceress got angry at the king's best knight, Sir Edmund Saxton. You know our ancestor. He killed her favorite dragon or something. Anyway, she put a curse on him. The curse of the knight in screaming armor. She made a special suit of armor and sent it to him as a gift. The armor was haunted. It held the spirit of an evil knight. That night, horrible screams and cries were heard from Saxton Castle. In the morning, Sir Edmund and all of his family had been killed. Kip's eyes grow wide as he goes on. All of his family was dead except one son. He had been out hunting. Anyway, he kept the armor. He was too scared to throw it away. The 4 of you arrive at the garage, and your dad reaches down to open the door. This is that armor. Family legend has it that one day it will wake up again, thirsty for Saxton blood. Then it will destroy all that is good, unless a brave and noble Saxton can defeat it. It has to be a member of the Saxton family. Ha! Team Puffins laughs. I'm related to you, so I'm a Saxton. What's an evil knight suit of armor going to do to me? We're going to get our answer. You can just forget that screaming armor story. Avery snaps before Kip gets a chance to answer you. It's totally stupid and not even true. But long after everyone has gone to sleep, you lie awake, thinking about the crate in your garage. Hours later, you've just dozed off when you are awakened by a chilling scream, and it's coming from the garage. The curse! Team Puffins gasps. Now, Team Puffins, here is your first choice. Do you ignore the scream, or do you investigate the chilling shriek? I need to know. The rest of the story depends on your answer. The Highland cow must have no tail, but has a tale to tell. Indeed. But if only the Highland cow chose the number Mambo number 5. Investigate to ignore. I saw investigate first, so we must investigate. Team Puffins decides to investigate. The chilling shriek. Scream! Another shriek fills the night. Kip and Avery are wide awake as you are. The piercing screams draw the 3 of you together at your bedside. You grab each of your cousins by the hand. We have to go to the garage and investigate, Team Puffins declares. We have to find out what's out there. Another scream pierces the air. Avery forgets how much cooler than you she is for the moment and clutches one of your arms. Kip grabs your other one. You grab a flashlight from your desk and make your way out into the night. You pull your cousins along behind you. Eventually, you come to the garage door. You pause a moment and listen to the screams. Well, here goes, says Team Puffins. You reach down, you grab the handle, and lift it open. Quickly, the garage door swings up and out of your way. Dark was never as dark as this. Monsters seemed to lurk in every corner. Familiar forms look strange. The beam of your flashlight cuts past the frightful shadowy figures to the 2 crates. They stand like tombstones in the middle of the garage, except that one of them is vibrating, shaking back and forth. The light reflects off a label on one of the crates, the one with the curse on it. Then you notice another handwritten label near the top of each crate. One says, Evil Night. The other reads, Good Night. Which one should we open? Team Puffin says nervously. Neither, Kip replies. He seems terrified. Maybe a little too terrified. You're not sure you buy all this curse stuff. Maybe it's all a big trip. Kip and Avery could have gotten someone to shout and shake the crate around. Who's really in that evil night crate anyway? Team Puffins wonders. Then again, the screams do sound pretty spooky. Maybe you should play it safe and open the crate marked Good Night. A suit of armor could come in handy if there is some crazy curse. Now, Team Puffins, your second choice of the night. Do you open the crate marked Good Night or Evil Night? The choice is yours. Pray the Highland Cow protects you. I tell all the knights, good night. Therefore, I take that as opening the crate marked Good Night. Well, open the Good Night crate, Team Puffins decides. You don't want to take any chances, but as soon as you say this, an ear-splitting scream fills the garage. The evil night crate starts rattling again. The armor inside clanks and rumbles and roars. You cling to Kip, or is it Avery? It's hard to tell in the darkness. The tall, evil night crate rocks closer to you. It tips backward and forward, backward and forward. If it falls on you, you'll be crushed. You try to pull your cousins out of the way. Let's bail, Team Puffins yells, but you only get a few steps towards the garage door when something blocks your escape route. A horrible beast, Kip cries. Ah! Avery screams as she's jerked away from your side. You accidentally drop your flashlight and it hits the concrete floor with a smack. There's something wrapped around my leg, Avery wails. Avery! Team Puffin shouts across to her. You start to move to her side, but you feel sharp claws scrape across your cheek. You jump back and grab your cheek where claws scraped you. You feel a large welt. You turn away from Avery and grope along the wall until you find the light switch. Click! One bare bulb hanging from the ceiling floods the garage with a dim light. Suddenly, everything gets quiet. Now you see it. The monster blocking your escape route is a lawnmower. The sharp-nailed fingers that raked across your cheek are exactly what they felt like. A garden rake. And the snake coiled so tightly around Abby's legs is a hose. I knew it all along, Abby says as she throws the hose aside. This whole thing is ridiculous, but it isn't over yet. Whatever's in the evil night crate demands your attention. The crate lurches forward, knocking Avery to the ground. The hanging light bulb starts to spin. Kip struggles to lift his sister to her feet. He looks really scared now. It's going to be up to you to do something. But what? Should you open the evil night's crate and confront the enemy? Whatever it is? Maybe it's all just a practical joke. You wouldn't put it past Kip, would you? Then again, maybe there really is a curse. If there is, maybe whatever in the crates marked Good Night could help you. You better open one of them. Which will it be? We've come back. Do you open the evil night or open the good night? The choice is yours. Team Puffins. Yes. Can I ask the audience? At death shall creep, shall decide. Excellent. Team Puffins has left her life to death shall creep. The good night. Excellent. We have to free the good night, yells Team Puffins. You yell over the screams and the heavy clanking. Maybe it can help us fight the curse. But, Kip sputters fearfully. Just open the thing, Avery snaps, and get it over with. Your fingers fly over the buckled leather straps that hold the crate closed. I've got the strap at the bottom, Kip says, moving next to you. Avery just watches you work. You and Kip work together to pry open one side of the crate. The clanking is louder than ever as the crate slams to the floor. You pick up your flashlight and shine it inside. Avery is the first to gasp. You peer into the open crate. There's a flash of light, and then there's nothing in this crate. Team Puffins exclaims. I thought you said there was armor in here. There was, Avery huffs, acting cool again, but now it's gone, okay? That's impossible, Kip argues. This crate weighed a ton when we moved it in here. Avery glances back at the empty crate. Someone must have taken the armor. That's all. For crying out loud. Oops, wrong thing to say. Yee! The bone-chilling scream of the evil knight turns to hideous, wicked laughter. It's the curse. The evil knight killed Sir Edmund Saxton, and now he's taken his armor. What's next? Team Puffin says in disbelief. Or who? Then you see something there, resting on the floor of the crate. A jagged piece of parchment paper. Do you pick it up? This cursed thing is seeming less and less silly by the second. Do you pick up the paper to see what it says? Or do you decide this whole business is too weird for your taste, and it's time to close the crate back up again and call the police? If we fail, it was not on me. Not on Ron or Hermione, but Harry Potter. My name is also a warning. Death shall definitely creep. Indeed, very true things. But do you pick up the paper to see what it says, or you try your best to lock up the crate and call the police? Of course, the answer lies with Team Puffins. For her fate is sealed. The Highland Cow says to pick it up. Then pick it up you shall. You bend down and pick up the jagged-edged piece of parchment. There's writing on it. Look what I found, says Team Puffins. It's a note, or a piece of one. You read it. Only a knight in Saxton born can break the curse that was we mourn. But they who wear Sir Edmund's steel must prove their courage and strength are real. Before the break of day brings light, one good shall fight one evil knight. That's funny. It sounds like a challenge. How boring, Avery complains. They who wear Sir Edmund's steel, Team Puffins reads again. What do you think that means? The armor, Kip replies. Sir Edmund's armor. But it's gone, Team Puffins points out. A scrap of paper looks like it's been torn from something, Kip adds. If we could find more pieces of the poem, maybe we can figure out where the missing armor is. It's like a puzzle. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, Avery says. And she rubs her eyes. I'm sleepy. Kip yawns a big yawn. You feel it too. An overwhelming urge to fall asleep. You let yourself curl up on the floor and... Do you wake up and are with your cousins? Or do you wake up all alone? The choice is yours, Team Puffins. Do you wake up with your cousins? Or alone? Time is ticking. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Excellent. Team Puffins has decided to wake up alone. You wake up all right, but the minute you open your eyes, you know something is very wrong. It's dark all around you. You have no idea where you are. Even if you could see, your head feels too heavy to turn and glance around. Kip, Avery, Team Puffins calls out. Your voice echoes back to you. You try to lift your hand and can't budge it. You try to move your leg, you can't. Your heart starts to race. Kip, Avery, Team Puffins yells this time. But there's nothing, only the feeling that you are trapped. Weighed down, your skin feels coated with something heavy and hard, like iron or like a suit of armor. Team Puffin screams. You hear the blood rushing in your ears. Or is it laughter? Now you remember everything. You were feeling so sleepy, but just before you fell asleep, the evil knight's voice filled your head. Be all the evil you can be. Join my army. While you slept, the evil knight made you one of his evil guards. You will have to serve his evil wishes for the rest of your little evil life. The end. And thus concludes our first tale of terror. As Team Puffins is now resigned. To guard the evil knight. No. Tis true. But that is only one tale of terror for the night. For there is another here who chose Mambo number 5 minus 1. And now they shall reap. They shall reap what they sow. The one who likes trains. Put him to the test. Oh, he is. Don't worry, Death shall creep. Is now the poor soul. In this next tale of terror. I bring us to our second tale. What? Poor unfortunate soul. I bring you Death Shall Creep in the Curse of the Creeping Coffin. Death shall creep. You can't believe it. You stare out the window at the creepy cemetery in your grandmother's backyard. The graves are moving, you're sure of it. Then you turn to see an even more frightening sight. Your grandmother's house is haunted by ghosts. Lots of ghosts. Evil ghosts who want you. Why are creeping coffins creeping? Do you stay to find out, or do you race home, even though a terrifying ghost is waiting for you there too? If you stay, you discover that the coffins are spelling a message in the graveyard. A message that spells out your doom. Unless you can find the ghost who is the keeper of the sword. Steal the sword, plunge it into the grave of the MPG. What's an MPG? You'll have to find out for yourself. But hurry, the ghosts are moving closer and closer. You're in control of this scary adventure. You decide what will happen, and how terrifying the scares will be. Now it's time to make your choices. He's in the hot seat tonight. Take a deep breath, cross your fingers, and prepare to give yourself goosebumps. The curse of the creeping coffin. I'm bored, moans Death Shall Creep. I'm so bored I could eat flies, just to see how they taste. Flies have germs, your grandmother replies. It's a hot, sticky day in the middle of July. You plop down in a creaky old chair in your grandmother's kitchen. Your parents dropped you off yesterday, before they left for their vacation, and you already could die of boredom. Your grandmother's old dog Sparkle yawns loudly. He crawls under the table. Moments later, he begins to snore. I know just how you feel. Sparkle, you say. You sigh loudly, Death Shall Creep. Why don't you go outside and find something to do? Your grandmother suggests. She looks up from the pie she's baking and nods towards the backyard. Go out there? You think into her backyard? No way. You glance out the window. It's probably 90 degrees in the shade, but you shiver. Your grandmother's house is right in front of an old cemetery. Rows and rows of old crumbling tombstones sit just beyond the edge of her backyard. But that's not what scares you. What scares you is that the tombstones have been moving. You noticed it right after you arrived yesterday. You saw the tombstones from your bedroom window on the second floor. You could tell some of the graves had cool carvings on them. You decided to go outside and take a closer look. But when you entered the graveyard, something was different, strange. Some of the graves were out of place. Nah, can't be, you told yourself. Graves don't disappear, but still, from your bedroom window, you could have sworn there were 6 or 7 graves in the back row. Now there are only 3. Nah, you must have counted wrong. You decided to forget it and went to bed. But when you woke up this morning and glanced out the window, the coffins had moved again. Now there were 10 in the back row. In the middle row seems more crowded. It almost looked as if some of the graves were moving forward and some of the graves were moving backward. There was a big traffic jam in the center. The coffins were rearranging themselves, but how and why? Your grandmother taps on your shoulder. She snaps you out of your daydream. Go on, she says. Go play outside. Outside? Out there? Death Shall Creep shudders as you glance out the kitchen window again. Oh no, you cry. It's disappeared. What's disappeared? Your grandmother asks. The grave with the angel on it, you screech, pointing out the window. It's gone. One headstone in particular caught your eye yesterday. It had an angel carving on it. The angel looked so realistic, you practically believed she could fly away. Did she? Your grandmother peers at the kitchen window. Don't be a goose, she scolds you. That tombstone is still there. You don't answer her. You can't. Your heart is pounding crazily, and your mouth has gone dry. You bolt out the back door. You've got to see for yourself. But in the graveyard, you discover that your grandmother is right. Tombstone with the angel isn't gone. It's just moved. Had been in the last row. Now it's up front. I'm losing my mind, Death Shall Creep thinks. Losing it completely. Or are you? Death Shall Creep runs back into the house shouting, Grandma, you yell. That grave with the angel on it. Your grandmother interrupts you. You don't have to shout, dear. The angel? She looks up from her pie crust. That's a nice one. Let me see. Who was buried there? Oh, yes. That's Elmra Martin's grave. Before you can explain about the moving gravestones, a voice on the far side of the room makes you jump. The name is Elvira Martin, the voice says sharply. Not Almira. You never could get my name right. Your mouth drops open, Death Shall Creep. A strange woman now stands in the doorway that leads from the kitchen into the hall. A very strange woman, because she isn't a living, breathing woman. She's a ghost. Grandma, you begin. But when the way your granny is humming to herself, you can tell she doesn't hear or see the scary visitor. In Don't you stare at me, you little wretch, the ghost says, pointing at you, Dead Shall Creep, or you'll be sorry. What are you going to do, Dead Shall Creep? Suddenly you're living in a haunted house. Do you run outside, or do you talk to the ghost? The choice is yours. Not the tombstones moving. Grandmama has secrets to tell. Ah, talk to the ghosts. Excellent. No harm ever came from talking to ghosts. He is brave. Why are you here? Death Shall Creep asks the ghost. But your grandmother thinks you're talking to her. You know I am here, your grandmother answers. I live here. Don't be such a goose. For some reason, your grandmother can't see Elvira. You always wanted to have a special skill, but ghost spotting wasn't what you had in mind. You try to think of a way to ask Elvira a question without having your grandmother think you're completely crazy, but you can't. So you keep staring at the ghost. She glares at you a moment, then motions for you to follow her. You watch as she floats into the hall and up the stairs towards your room. Follow a ghost, you think? Are you nuts? Just the idea gives you a chill. Do you follow the ghost, Death Shall Creep? Or do you race out of the house fast and go home? The choice is yours. Excellent. Following the ghost. Dead Shall Creep follows Elvira to the room on the second floor. The moment you step into the bedroom, she slams the door. She whirls around to face you. Her eyes turn green and begin to glow. You back up, stumbling, and fall onto the bed. You little wretch, she says. I don't want any trouble from you. Sparks seem to fly from her flashing green eyes. You shrink back into the pillows. Then Elvira gazes around the room. Yes, yes, she says. This will do nicely. Well, what do you mean? Death Shall Creep stammers. Elvira floats towards the bed. She hovers over you. I'm taking over this room. Now, she tells you. Get out! Would love to leave, but you're shaking too hard to get up. Besides, you have to find out what's going on. Elvira's the only one who can explain it to you. Please, you beg. Just tell me why you're here. And why are the graves moving? Shut up, she screeches. Get off the bed. I want to lie down. I haven't slept in a bed in 51 years. Uh-oh. You realize you aren't just dealing with a ghost here. You're dealing with a ghost in a very bad mood. You better do what she says. You jump up from the bed. Elvira lies down, nearly spreading her white satin dress on the covers. Her long red hair fans out across the pillows. Ah, she sighs, a real bed. She shuts her eyes. You hope she doesn't sleep too long. You have so many questions to ask. And you hope she'll be in a better mood when she wakes up. She dozes for exactly 2 minutes. Then her eyes pop open. You notice they aren't glowing green anymore. Elvira says. That's better. Now that she's awake, you're not sure how to begin. You're almost too freaked out to speak, but you have to know. Why are the graves moving, you ask? What's going on? It's the curse of the creeping coffins, the ghostly woman answers. And we're moving into this house. All of us. All of us? Oh. What does that mean? Well, what do you mean? All of you? You managed to stammer. You ask too many questions. Uh-oh, Elvira's eyes flash green again. Don't get in our way, and maybe we'll let you live. She soars up over your head, glares down at you. Don't you go talking to the ghost hunter McFarling either, Elvira adds. And the next instant, she floats backward and disappears into the wall. McFarling? A ghost hunter? You're startled by loud, clumping footsteps above you. You glance up at the ceiling, the light fixture is shaking. It sounds as if a whole crowd wearing clunky boots is stomping around in the attic. Who could it be? He really wants to catch the ghost. If you want to find out about McFarlane, or do you want to find out who's in the attic? The choice is yours. Death shall creep. Inquire about the ghost hunter, or find out who's stomping around in your attic. Choices, choices. Excellent. He inquires about McFarland. Ghost hunter. That's exactly what you need, Detch the Creep. But how are you going to find this McFarlane guy? You dash out of your room and run downstairs as fast as you can. You rush back into the kitchen. Grandma, you gasp, almost out of breath. Do you know someone named McFarlane? I need a pro. Nice choice. Oh, don't go talking to me about McFarlane, she says. That loon, he came around here last month. Told me he thought my house would be haunted soon. Said something about a curse, too. Can you imagine that? I don't want you going anywhere near that man. Let's face it, Granny's not going to be much help. So you race to the computer. On a hunch, you search for ghost exterminators. Bingo! There he is. Mac McFarlane, ghost hunter. There may be hope after all, as long as you can get out of the house before Elvira finds out what you're doing. So, shh. Your knock, the Highland cow is wise. Tiptoe out the door. Luckily, everything in your grandma's small town is within biking distance. 20 minutes later, you've biked over to Mac McFarlane's office, which happens to be located in his garage. You knock on the side of the garage. Come in, a voice calls. You yank open the door. Wow, you think when you see him. Mac McFarlane has frizzy, kinkly blonde hair sticking out all over his head. He's wearing 6 earrings, a nose ring, and a pair of heavy black-framed glasses with blue lens in them. He's about 20 years old. So that's why your grandma didn't like him. He's cool! What's up, McFarlane says. You look like you've just seen a ghost, he laughs. Sorry, just a little ghost hunting humor. You explain about Elvira and that she told you the ghosts are going to take over your grandmother's house. I've been expecting this, McFarlane says, shaking his head. I tried to warn your grandmother. Can you help us? Detchel Creep pleads. His eyes are hidden behind the blue lenses. You can't tell what he's thinking. Will Mac McFarlane help you? We're about to find out. Suddenly, McFarlane swims into gear. He picks up a strange electronic box and heads for the door. Come on, he says. We've got to hurry. Let's go. Finally, someone who can help you. You feel better already. McFarlane jumps into his car, an old VW Bug. You hop on your bike. As you ride to your grandmother's house, he drives along beside you. He rolls down the window and talks to you the whole time. Have the gravestones been moving around? He asks. Yeah, you exclaim. So you're not crazy. Why are they doing that? I'm not sure, he says. I've only seen it once before, but I think they're moving into position to spout out some kind of message or curse. Graves can spell? That doesn't sound possible. But you're ready to believe anything now. How can we stop them? Death Shall Creep asks Mac. It won't be easy, he tells you. You were afraid of that. First, McFarlane explains, you'll have to fight the Keeper of the Sword. That's one of the ghosts. You need to give the special sword. You need to get the special sword and use it to stop the MPG. What's the MPG? Death Shall Creep asks. The most powerful ghost, McFarlane says. It's a term for the spirit who has control over the graveyard. Once you have the sword, Mac continues, you must plunge it into the grave of the MPG. But you've got to hurry, because when all the graves have moved into position and spell out the message, it'll be too late. The curse will be complete, and after that, you'll never be able to get the ghosts back into their graves. Your head is spinning from what Mac just told you, but you nod if you understand. You arrive at your grandmother's house. McFarlane stops his car and hops out. You get off your bike and park it. McFarlane faces your grandmother's house and switches on the funky electronic box he's carrying. Red dials light up. You hear a loud beeping sound. Uh-oh, McFarlane says. Major trouble. Give me $1. Do you give McFarlane the $1, or do you refuse to give him your money? The choice is yours. Death Shall Creep. Now we find out. Will the $1 save his soul? Maybe all he has is his credit card and no cash. But luckily, he has $1. And he gives it to him willingly. The doll hair. How generous. He could have used that today. You reluctantly hand McFarlane the $1 bill. He folds the $1 in half twice. Then he jams it into the tiny slot of his electronic box. A minute later, the beeping stops. The box spits the $1 back out. Thanks, McFarlane says. That spirit counter was jammed. He gives the $1 back to you. Weird, you think, but it seems to have worked. Then McFarlane stares at the red dials on his machine. Bad news, kid, McFarlane says finally. By my count, there are 10 ghosts in the house already. That's way over my limit. You're on your own. He starts back toward his car. Wait! Death Shall Creep calls after him. You can't leave me here. Please, you have to help me. McFarlane hesitates for a minute. He shrugs. Okay, he says. This is what I'm willing to do. I'll help you make a map of the graveyard. Come on. A map of the graveyard? For what? Death Shall Creep wonders. But you don't ask questions. You just follow Mac into the cemetery and do what he tells you. An hour later, you've got a drawing for the first row of gravestones. Oh. And I simply must show you this picture. Por favor. Give me but one moment to supply the picture of your doom or salvation. This is indeed intense. Ten ghosts living in his house, his grandma's house, rent-free. Will he evacuate? Perfect. I should have what I need for this picture. Here is your picture. I hope you're ready. Here is your picture. Study it well. Save you it can. Great Scott! He was born ready. Wait, what are the choices? As you can see, your grandma's house is to the north, and the rest of the graveyard is to the south. And everyone else is in the front, middle, and back rows. Now we turn to our next part of your tale. You stare down at the map of gravestones in your hands. You wonder how it can possibly help you. Big trouble, Max says, peering over your shoulder. The message is already almost completely spelled out. What message? Digital Creep asks, puzzled. Look at these first 4 rows, he says, pointing at the paper. The rest of the graves don't matter. That's why I didn't put them on the map. Take a pen and circle the first letter of the last name on each tombstone. It spells out a message. Don't you see? No, you don't see. And you won't see until you do it. So do it! Circle the first letter of the last name on each tombstone. It spells out a message. Or part of one. Here is your doom. Put the letters in the chat if you're brave. Remember the first letter of the last name. On each tombstone. You will die soon. Indeed. It has been figured out. Indeed. Now, we continue with your tale. Where are the dice to roll? That's this Sunday. Oh no! Digital Creep gasps. You stare at the map, and the message spelled out on the tombstones. You will die soon. That's the terrible message the graves are moving around to spell. And is the you? Or is the curse directed at your grandma? Either way, it's super bad news. Mac, Digital Creep says, there's only one letter missing. Only one coffin has to creep into place, and then the curse will be complete, Max says. He turns and walks back to his car. Wait! Digital Creep calls after him. He stops, but only long enough to pull out a business card. Here, he says. Call me after you defeat the Keeper of the Sword. I'll tell you what to do next. He jumps back in his VW bug, leaving you standing in front of your grandmother's house. Oh. He calls as he starts to drive off. 2 things to remember. Be sure to find out the name of the Keeper of the Sword and stay away from the Luckmeyer twins. The Luckmeyer twins, Detchel Creep thinks. Either way, it's fatality. Your soul is mine. Keep away from the Luckmeyer twins. That should be easy. No problem. Twins are pretty easy to spot. And then it hits Detchel Creep. Do they always stick together? Or are they guys or girls? How old are they? No way to know. Maybe this will be more difficult than you thought. You slink into your grandmother's house. You feel creepy, knowing the place is loaded with ghosts. And how are you going to find the Keeper of the Sword? You don't have a clue. Your head swims as you wander up the 2nd floor. Bam! A door bangs open. It nearly hits you on the head. You jump back and peer into a hall closet. Don't go in there, a voice behind you warns. You whirl around and see a ghost, a teenager from another time. He's dressed in an old-fashioned black velvet suit with a frilly white shirt. His hair is slicked back and combed neatly behind his ears. He's smiling, but it's a sneaky smile. Would you listen to him? Do you choose to stay out of the closet, or do you see what's in the closet? The choice is yours, Detchel Creep. Choose wisely. In the closet. I have to save my grandma. And save your grandma. Perhaps you shall. You're going to trust a ghost? No way. Who knows what he's got up his ruffled sleeve? If this ghost doesn't want you to see what's in the closet, you bet it's something that can help you unhaunt your grandmother's house. You peer into the dark closet. You don't see anything. You glance back at the ghost. He seems nervous. Good. You walk right into the closet. Ah! There's nothing under your feet but air. You're desperately trying to grab hold of something. Anything! But it's no use. You're falling down, down, down into the darkness, see? Your grandmother has turned this closet into a clothes chute. She opens the door and tosses her dirty laundry in. The clothes fall straight down to the basement. That's where the washer is. And it's a 2-story drop. Get the picture? Now, how would you like to be washed? Hot water or cold? With or without bleach? Because it's time to clean. Clean up your act, kid. You're all washed up in this ghost hunting business. The end. And that's how we end this tale of terror. If only he had survived that 2-story drop. What a trooper. I would have said 9021 go. And thus 2 victims were claimed this night. One cursed to forever guard an evil night. One who fell 2 stories too his demise. Who, I beg you, who is next? Who's got the scruff? Who has the guts? We'll find out in our next tale of terror. My ending was not so bad. You're just employed forever. One was foolish and the other slightly less. If only he'd paid attention to the tombstones. And that's why you choose number 5, like Mambo says. Indeed. That is why you choose number 5. I suppose I shall put myself in the next story of terror. A story about myself, Eggo, and our midnight culturalists. I was trying to save my grandma, but instead you fell to your doom. Let's see. I shall tempt fate. Yes, let us see your fate. I shall now attempt escape from the carnival of horrors. Welcome to the carnival of horrors. This is no ordinary carnival. Here, I'll find awesome rides, exciting games of chance, and the weirdest freak show ever. Do I dare to enter? Am I brave enough to risk the supersonic space coaster? Can I make it through the house of horrors alive? This scary adventure is all about me. I decide what will happen, and I decide how terrifying the scares will be. If I make the right choices, I'll escape from the spine-tingling carnival of horrors in time. If I make the wrong choices, I better beware. So I better take a long, deep breath, cross my fingers, prepare to give myself goosebumps. For I am now in the escape from the carnival of horrors. What do you want to do? I don't know, Patty. What do you want to do? Not fair, Brad. I asked you first. Patty and Brad, my two best friends, arguing, as usual. It's the last week of August. Patty and Brad haven't stopped fighting since summer vacation started. Patty likes being bossy. I don't mind, though. It's no big deal. It's hard to win a fight with her anyway. You don't know why Brad even tries. I guess it's because she doesn't want to look like a wimp in front of a girl. Sorry. He doesn't want to look like a wimp in front of a girl. There's nothing to do, I guess. I'll just go home. Brad says. He shoves his hands in his pockets, then his shoulders slump. He sort of shivers up. I guess Brad is kind of a wimp, even if he's my best friend. You're so boring, Brad, Patty complains. Whenever Patty complains, her freckles really pop out. Now there are about 1 million of them spread across her face. Hey, I know what we should do, Patty suddenly bursts out. Let's bike over to Bennett Field and watch them set up the carnival. I don't know, I answer. It's getting dark. Mom said I have to be in by 9. It's only a quick bike ride, Brad says. Are you some kind of wimp? Brad calling me a wimp? I can't believe it. Okay, I agree. But if it's as bad as last year, there won't be much to see. Don't you remember the main attraction, you remind them? The ride they called Terror Track turned out to be a baby choo-choo train that circled around and around and around. It doesn't matter what you say. Patty's made up her mind. You're going to ride over to the carnival. A hot, humid breeze blows in my face as I pedal along. Patty's in the lead, no surprise, and Brad's puffing behind me. It's dark by the time we reach Bennett's field. Me and my friends drop our bikes in the grass and race across the moonlit field toward the huge wooden fence that surrounds the carnival. As I reach the carnival entrance, I hear music coming from inside. Not the usual organ, corny stuff they always play. Some really strange music. Sounds familiar, totally new at the same time. Brad stretches his neck, trying to peer over the fence, but no luck. The fence is way too high. Patty jiggles the padlock on the gate. It's sealed shut. I guess we'll have to wait until tomorrow night when the carnival opens, Brad says. No way, Patty says. Let's climb the fence now. You crazy? Brad says. We'll get caught. Come on. There's probably no one in there, Patty replies. My friends turn to me to cast the deciding vote. I glance at my watch. It's almost 9. If I'm going to get home in time, I should start back now. What am I going to do? Patty is bossy. She can take a lap, or 3 perhaps, and Brad is boring. Do I go home, or do I climb the fence? Well, I definitely don't want to be a sissy Lala. So, I guess I'll climb the fence. I can't leave my friend Patty alone. Even though she's bossy. I look to my friends and say, let's do it. Let's climb the fence. Patty's halfway up before I finish speaking. I let Brad go next. I'm last. It's a hard climb up. There's really no place on the fence to get a good grip. Patty is a nuisance. This is true. It's a hard climb up. There's really no place on the fence to get a good grip. But I make it to the top. I swing my legs over and I tumble down. I land on the grass. I'm inside. Me and my friends gaze around. It's pretty dark. The only light comes from torches. At first, carnival looks like the same as it always does. Dinky rides, hot dog wagons. The light starts to flicker on every corner of the field. The rides start to move. It's as if the whole place is magically coming to life. Hey, look at that giant roller coaster, I exclaim, pointing up ahead. They never had a roller coaster before. Yeah, Brad agrees, and the whole place is a lot bigger than last year. This is awesome, Patty says as she sprints towards the rides. Me and Brad take off after Patty. We all stop in front of the roller coaster. Wow, Patty says as she gazes up at it. It's like a rocket to outer space. Behind the roller coaster, I spy a castle surrounded by a moat. A spooky-looking haunted house sitting atop a hill. These are the coolest rides I've ever seen, I say. They still have the dumb choo-choo train thing over there, I point out. But we could ride this stuff all night and never go near it. Patty grabs my arm and tugs me over to the other side of the carnival to the midway. Brad races after us. Hey! Where are all those dinky wooden boots from last year, I ask, as I gawk at the amazing games of chance. They're gone, and in their place are giant video games and huge spinning wheels studded with hundreds of blinking gold-colored lights. Get a load of that, Bradley suddenly cries out. You and Patty spin around. I can't believe what you see. I'm staring at a sign that reads World's Freakiest Freak Show. The three of us gape at the pictures. There's the three-headed man with the ugliest collection of faces I've ever seen. And the snake lady, a young blonde girl with a beautiful face and the body of a slithering snake. This is, I start to say. But I don't finish because a large hand has come down on my shoulder. Hard. I slowly turn and gaze up at the huge man with shoulders wider than a refrigerator. He has coal-black eyes with a thick mustache to match. He looks strong enough and mean enough to hitch me over the fence with one hand.
What are you doing? His deep voice booms. You're not allowed in here.
He says, pointing directly at me. We're sorry, you say, hoping you appear sorry and not jump scared. We wanted to look around, that's all. We'll leave right now. His eyes stare into mine. He clamps both hands down on my shoulders and says,
You're not going anywhere.
Uh-oh. What do you mean? Brad asked, trembling all over.
I just had an idea. A great idea, the man replies. I want you kids to stay and try out the rides before the grand opening. Tomorrow.
He sounds like he's us insurance. The guy with coal in his eyes. Yes, perhaps he does. Except tonight. Tonight, he gives out doom. Or so we'll see. Hattie's eyes open wide. Cool, she says. Are you sure it's all right with the owner? I ask.
I'm Big Al, the manager. What I say around here goes.
Big Al digs around in his checker jacket and pulls out 3 maps. He hands one to each of us.
Study them carefully, he says. If you have any questions, ask them now.
My eyes fall upon the map. I have a question, but when I gaze up, Big Al is gone. He's vanished. A whole carnival to ourselves, Patty exclaims. Where should we start? I stare down at my map again. I notice that the carnival is split in half. One side are the rides, tons of them, and the other side is the midway, packed with games of chance in the freak show. What will I try first? Oh man, I'm not one for rides. I think I'm gonna go to the games of chance. Let's head for the midway. Play some games, I say. You and Patty and Brad jog down a wide avenue. Tents of every color line the street. Carnival music blaring from loudspeakers. I spot a green neon sign flashing above a yellow striped tent. The sign reads, Madame Zeno, fortune teller. Excellent, I exclaim. I'm going in. I tell my friends I'll catch up with them in a minute. I lift the tent flap. Inside, one small candle flickers in the dark. I hear a low voice call out, Enter my chamber. There is Madame Zeno sitting in the shadows. She wears a long red dress dotted with brightly colored gems. They shimmer in the candlelight. Her black hair trembles to her shoulders as she bends over a large crystal ball. Welcome, she whispers. She reaches out and gently lifts my hand. Let me tell you a future. Patty needs to read the room. She must be sacrificed. I find out my future. Madame Zeno studies my hand closely. She traces the lines in my hand with her soft fingers. I see horror in your future. In your immediate future, she warns. What kind of horror? I stammer. What do you mean? Madame Zeno releases my hand. She picks up a strange deck of cards. She spreads them out on the table. I notice the cards have pictures of a headless man, a bloody sword, a large evil eye. She gathers up all the cards and flips the deck over. Then she deals out a red card and a blue card. Turn one over, she commands. Learn your fate. Or do I take the red card or do I take the blue card? I think I'm gonna go red, but I also think I should go blue. Oh, the conundrum. Oh. Because them paw tracks are red, I will go red. I reach out slowly and touch the red card. To my amazement, A 3D heart magically appears and rises from the flat surface. Then it starts to beat. Da-dum, da-dum. It must be some fancy optical illusion. I lean closer to figure out the trick. Ah! I screech and jerk back to avoid the warm red liquid that nearly squirts in my eye. Is it blood? It looks like blood. Wow. Cool effect, I say. How did you do it? Turn over the card, Madame Zeno orders. Do it now. Madame Zeno really gets into her act. Doesn't she know this is just a game, I think? But I do as I'm told. Big deal. No weird pictures, no hidden fortunes. All you see are the numbers 1, 3, 2, shimmering in gold script against a midnight background. What does it mean? I ask. You won't know when the time is right, the fortune teller whispers. Her voice is so low you can barely hear her. It could save your life. What does she mean, save my life? What do you mean the magic number could save my life? I ask Madame Zeno, but the fortune teller doesn't answer. She stares off into space. She seems to have fallen into a deep trance. I don't really believe her. These fortune tellers are all fakes. But I memorize the number anyway. 132. 132. I picked red instead of blue. I chant to help me remember. Madame Zeno puts the cards back in the deck. She closes her eyes and waves me away with her jeweled hand. Yes, the fortune telling is over. I leave the tent to search for Patty and Brad. I squint under the bright lights of the midway, scanning all the game booths, but I can't find them. Trying to figure out which way to go when I spot Big Al coming towards me. He's not alone. He's leading a large group of people. As they come closer, you hear that they are chanting something. What is it? Play or pay. Play or pay. What does that mean? Hi, I say to Big Al. Who are all those people? He doesn't really answer my question. Welcome to the Carnival of Horrors, he says. You must play or pay. We have many games at our midway. You must play too. He practically spits the word must out. If you succeed, you can win prizes, but if you lose, you pay with your life. Boy, he's really laying it on thick, I think. It's a pretty cool gimmick. Okay, I'll play a game. I've got to go home. No one goes home, Big Al says, until they play. You must play 2 games and survive. Okay, I mutter to myself. I glance around the midway at the 2 closest games. Guess your weight on Mars and the Wheel of Chance. I have to pick one to start, or I'll never get out of here. Guess my weight on Mars or the Wheel of Chance. I'm gonna say guess my weight. I step up to the guess your weight on Mars booth. A woman in a spacesuit motions to inside the gate. I pass through and find myself in the middle of a courtyard that looks just like a miniature launching site, complete with its own rocket. Security check, the lady says as she presses my hand on a fake scanner. How does this game work, I ask. I guess how much you weigh on Mars, she explains. You'll enter the planet simulation chamber and stand on the scale. If I'm stumped by more than 1 pound up or down, you win a giant candy bar. But what if you guess right? The space lady doesn't say anything at first. She just smiles, a nasty smile. Then she answers, you lose, is all she says. The space lady slowly circles as she sizes me up from head to toe. I think you weigh 38 pounds. 38 pounds? Oh man, are you wrong? I'm never wrong, she says, smirking. She snaps her fingers and 2 enormous guards appear. They each take one of my arms and drag me out the courtyard. I don't weigh 38 pounds, I yell. But then you remember, it isn't your weight on Earth that matters. It's my weight on Mars. Do I weigh 38 pounds on Mars? I better find out quick, because something tells me that's what Big Al said. Something tells me what Big Al said about having to survive might be true. Gotta figure out what I weigh on Mars. Fast! But how? I'm about to give up when I notice a flashing sign. It reads, the gravity on Mars is almost 40% of what it is on Earth. Okay, now I can figure it out. Multiply my real Earth weight by 4, drop off the last digit. For example, if I weigh 90 pounds times 4 is 360. Dropping off the last digit, I get 36 for my weight on Mars. If you don't want to do the math, you can leave it to luck. Just guess. Okay. If I think my weight on Mars is 37 to 39, or do I think it's less than 37, or more than 39? Oh, choices. Uh, 132. It could save my life. 132. Madame Zeno gave me that number. 132. 132. Oh, is that how much I weigh? Let's see. Okay. The 132 times 4 is 528, and I drop off the last digit, I get 52. I think I'm more than 37 or 39. I think I'm more than 39. Let's see. Madame Zeno! Don't fail me. I'm pretty sure that the space lady guessed wrong. All I have to do is step on the scale to prove it. The two goons show you inside the space planet simulation chamber. It's a long, narrow tube, and it's really stuffy inside. I can barely breathe. I step on the scale. I check the readout. Boy, oh boy, the space lady is wrong. I jump up and down. I won! I won! Back outside, I collect my prize. It's a huge chocolate bar. I take a big bite out of it and stuff the rest in my pocket, and I gaze around. Coast is clear. Maybe I can find Patty and Brad and get the hell out of here. I walk a few steps forward, but a heavy hand clamps down on my shoulder from behind. It's Big Al. It's time to play another game, he says, grinning. I guess now it's time to play the Wheel of Chance. I take a few steps along the midway, hoping I've won enough prizes and points. I notice the crowd of people surrounding Big Al. They're all chanting, pay or play. Pay or play. I break through the crowd and grab Big Al's arm. Hey! You know where my friends are? Certainly, Big Al says, pointing up ahead. They're right over there. Patty! Brad! I shout out and rush up to them. Come on, we gotta go. This carnival is evil. But before they can say a word, Big Al's voice booms from behind you. Not before the final challenge. Big Al shoves me and my friends into a huge red tent. It seems to be set up for some kind of show. Red carpeted steps lead to a platform which sits under a golden arch. The arch twinkles with 1,000 colored lights that spell out, Final Challenge. Trumpets blast as people flood into the viewing area. As they march in, they clap their hands and yell, Final, Final. Big Al leads you up to the carpeted steps. I'm standing on the platform now in front of the shimmering curtain that hangs down from the arch. The crowd begins to chant, Sudden death, sudden death. What do you think that means? Patty asks. The final challenge, Big Al announces, and the crowd goes wild. He turns to me and says, Remember, the fun games are over. Now you're playing for your life.
You go first.
Big Al says to me. I see Brad and Patty taken off to the side by a huge man in a black hood. Two red-haired dwarfs in clown costumes scurry up the steps. To my surprise, they fit me with new high-top sneakers with metal studs running up the backs. This is going to be some kind of race, I think? But then I change my mind when they snap a heavy metal helmet on my head. The crowd's cheers grow louder. Big Al throws a switch, the curtain behind me parts, and whammo! Then behind the curtain turns into a super magnet. I go zinging to the wall like a dart to a bullseye. Seconds later, my head and the back of my feet slam into the wall. They're hanging upside down in the middle of a gigantic magnetic wheel.
Are you ready for the final challenge?
Big Al asks. Of course not, I say. Let me down.
We'll let you down, but not until you face the final challenge. One spin will decide your fate. If you win, you go. If you lose, you stay forever. What will be your fate?
Big Al approaches the wheel. Brad and Patty are holding on to each other. My heart is pounding. My hands are sweating. This is it. One spin. He gives the wheel, with me on it, a hard turn. Where will it stop? Guess. Oh. Oh, no. Oh, my God. My wheel is turning. Oh, God. Final. 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 I hear the crowd yelling as they spin. As I'm spinning around and around. I'm getting dizzy. Really dizzy. So dizzy that I faint. And my eyes flutter open. Yow! Someone splashes cold water in my face. My eyes open. Come on! Wake up, it's almost showtime. A raspy voice says, Showtime? Gazing into the eyes of a dwarf. What show?
The Freak Show. You are the amazing Siamese triplets.
I glance around and see Patty on one side of me and Brad on the other. I try to pull away from them, but I can't. We're stuck together with some kind of glue, Patty says. It isn't glue, Brad argues. Is not. Well, whatever it is, I'm stuck. Stuck between your arguing friends for a long, long time. Like forever. And there's something I can't argue about. This really is
the end.
No! I got turned into a monster in my tale of terror. A monster.
I was doing so good, and I was so close. But apparently for evil, it was so easy. Dang. Someone became the guard of the evil knight. Another person fell 2 stories to their death. And I became a freak of nature. Twisted tales of doom. All too soon, it seems. For the midnight culturalists.
I am still dead. Ah, 'tis true. 'Tis true.
2 alive. Only 1 taken too soon. The Tales of Terror. Let us go back in time. And see if we can't change fate. Our destinies, perhaps. There may lie another path. So, let us return to the evil night with Teen Puffkins and her cousins. Yes. We retread her tale of terror. Where her uncle and her cousins have transported 2 crates carrying armor to her humble abode, where her father says of a certain curse. The screaming armor. One of good, one of evil. Everyone has gone to sleep, yet Team Puffins lies awake, thinking about the crates in the garage. She hears after she dozes off and is awakened by a chilling scream coming from the garage. She rethinks the curse. But does she ignore the scream? Or does she investigate the chilling shriek? Perhaps she can find a new passage. Passage to freedom. A new passage to salvation. The witching hour be nigh. Now to think. Of another tale, twisted tale of
of Macroby that I can tell to end our night as we go into this All Hallows Eve. But a book, a special book that I saved for special occasions just as this. Some might say a classic. Yet others a curse. Allow me to get my book. No harm ever came from reading a book. I'm back from the study in one of the many books that lay behind me off the shelf. A special book for this special night. I shall now recite for you all. I shall now recite for you all the fall of the House of Usher. A-Town. Do-do, 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 do-do. Usher, Usher. Sadly, not that Usher. Here we are. Listen closely. This tale of Macroby. The fall of the House of Usher. During the whole of a dull, dark, and soundless day in the autumn of the year, when the clouds hung oppressively low in the heavens, I had been passing alone, on horseback, through a singularly dread tract of country. At the length found myself, as the shades of the evening drew on, within view of the melancholy house of Usher. I know not how it was, but with the first glimpse of the building a sense of insufferable gloom pervaded my spirit. I say insufferable, for the feeling was unrivaled by any of that half-pleasurable, because poetic sentiment from which mind usually receives even the sternest natural images of the desolate or terrible. I looked upon the scene before me, upon the mere house in the simple landscape features of the domain. Upon the bleak walls opened the vacant eyes like windows. Upon a few rank rank sedges and upon a few white trunks of decayed trees, with an utter depression of soul which I can compare to no earthly sensation more properly than to the after-dream of the reveler upon opium, the bitter lasp, and to everyday life the hideous dropping off of the veil. There was an ickness, a sinking, a sickening of the heart, an unredeemed dreariness of thought which no goading of the imagination could torture into an aught of the sublime. What was it? I was paused to think. What was it so unnerved me in the contemplation of the house of Usher? Is it a mystery all insoluble? Nor could I grapple with the shadowy fancies that crowded upon me as I pondered. I was forced to fall back upon the unsatisfactory conclusion that while beyond doubt there are combinations of very simple natural objects which have the power of thus affecting us, still the analysis of this power lies among the considerations beyond our depth. It was possible, I reflected, that a mere different arrangement of the particulars of the scene of the details of the picture would be sufficient to modify, or perhaps to annihilate, its capacity for sorrowful impression. In acting upon this idea, I reined my horse to the precipitous brink of a black and lurid tarn that lay unruffled luster by the dwelling, and gazed down, but with a shoulder even more thrilling than before, upon the remodeled and inverted images of the grey sage, and the ghastly tree stems, and the vacant and eye-like windows. Nevertheless, in this mansion of gloom, I now prospered to myself, a sojourn of some weeks. Its proprietor, Roderick Usher, had been one of my boon. Companions in boyhood. But many years had elapsed since our meeting. A letter, however, had lately reached me in a distant part of the country. A letter from him, which in its widely impugnative nature had admitted of one other than a personal reply. The MS gave evidence of nervous agitation. The writer spoke of acute bodily illness, of a mental disorder which oppressed him, and of an earnest desire to see me, as his best and indeed his only personal friend, with a view of attempting, by the cheerfulness of my society, some alleviation of his malady. With the manner in which all of this and much more was said, was the apparent heart that went with his request, which allowed me no room for hesitation, and I curtly obeyed forthwith, while I still considered a very singular summons. Although as boys we had been very intimate associates, yet I really knew little of my friend. His reserve had always been excessive and habitual. I was aware, however, that his very ancient family had been noted time out of mind for a peculiar sensibility of temperament, displaying itself through long ages and many works of exalted art, and manifested of late in the repeated deeds of magnificent yet unobtrusive charity, as well as in a passionate devotion to the intricacies, perhaps even more than to the orthodox and easily recognizable beauties of musical science. I had learned, too, the very remarkable fact that the stem of the Usher race, all time honored as it was, had put forth at no period any enduring branch. In other words, that the entire family lay in the direct line of descent, and had always, with very trifling and very temporary variation, so lain. It was this deficiency I considered while running over in thought the perfect keeping of the character of the premise with the accredited character of the people, and while speculating upon the possible influence which the one, in the long lapse of centuries, might have exercised upon the other. It was the deficiency, perhaps, of collateral issue, of the consequent undeviating transmission from sire to son, to the patrimony within the name, which had at length so identified the two as to merge the original title of the estate in the quaint and evocable appellation of the House of Usher, an appellation which seemed to include in the minds of the peasantry who used it both the family and the family mansion. I have said the sole effect of my somewhat childish experiment, that of looking down within the tarn, had been to deepen the first singular impression, there can be no doubt that the consequences of the rapid increase of my superstition, for what should I not so turn it, serving mainly to accelerate the increase itself, such, as I have long known, is the paradoxical law of the sentiments having terror as a basis, as I might have been for this reason only, that when I again uplifted my eyes to the house itself, from its image in the pool, there grew in my mind a strange fancy, a fancy so ridiculous indeed, that I had mentioned it to show the vivid force of the sensation which oppressed me. I had so worked up my imagination as really to believe that about the whole mansion and domain there hung an atmosphere peculiar to themselves and their immediate vicinity, an atmosphere which had no affinity with the air of heavens, but which had reeked up from the decayed trees and the grey wall, and the silent tarn, a pestilent and mystic vapor, dull, sluggish, faintly discernible, and leaden-hued. Shrugging off from my spirit what must have been a dream, I scanned more narrowly the real aspect of the building. Its principal feature seemed to be that of an excessive antiquity. The discoloration of ages had been great. Minute fungi overspread the whole exterior, hanging in a fine tangled webwork from the eaves, yet all the ways apart from the extraordinary disputation, no portion of the mansion had fallen, and there appeared to be a wild inconsistency between the still perfect adaptation of parts and the crumbling condition of the individual stalls, in which there was reminded me of the spacious totality of an old woodwork which had rotted for long years in some neglected vault, with no disturbances from the breath of the external air. Beyond this indication of extensive decay, however, the fabric gave little token of instability. Perhaps the eye of a scrutinizing observer might have discovered a barely perceptible fissure, which, extending from the roof of the building in front, made its way down the wall in a zigzag direction until it became lost in the sullen waters of the tarn. Noticing these things, I rode over a short causeway to the house. A servant is waiting, took my horse, and I entered the Gothic archway of the hall. A valiant of stealthy step, these conducted me in silence, though many dark and intricate passages in my progress to the studio of his master. Much that I encountered on the way contribute, I know not how, to heighten the vague sentiments of which I have already spoken. While the objects around me, while the cravings of the ceiling, the sombre tapestries of the walls, the ebon blackness of the floors, and the phantasmagoric armorial trophies which rattled as I strode, but were matter to which, or to such as which, I had been accustomed from my infancy. While I hesitated not to acknowledge how familiar was all of this, I still wondered to how unfamiliar were the fancies which ordinary images were stirring up. On one of the staircases I met the physician of the family. His countenance, I thought, wore a mingled expression of low cunning and perplexity. He accosted me with trepidation and passed on. The velvet now threw open a door and ushered me into its presence of his master. The room in which I found myself was very large and lofty. The windows were long, narrow, and pointed, at so vast a distance from the black oaken floor to be altogether inaccessible from within. Feeble gleams of encrimsoned light made their way through the trestled panes, and served to render sufficiently distant the more prominent objects around. The eye, however, struggled silently distinct the more prominent objects around. The eye, however, struggled in vain to reach the remoter angles of the chamber, or the recesses of the vaulted and fretted ceiling. Dark draperies hung along the walls. The general furniture was profuse, comfortless, antique, and tattered. Many books and musical instruments lay scattered about, but failed to give any vitality to the scene. I felt that I breathed an atmosphere of sorrow. An air of stern and deep and irredeemable gloom hung over and pervaded all. Upon my entrance, Usher arose from a sofa on which he had been lying at full length, and greeted me with a vivacious warmth which had much in it. I at first thought of an overdone cordiality of the constrained effort of the immune man of the world. A glance, however, at his countenance conserved me of his perfect sincerity. We sat down. For some moments, while he spoke not, perfect sincerity, we sat down and gazed upon him with feeling half of pity, half of awe. Surely, man had never before so terribly altered in such brief a period, so had Roderick Usher. It was with difficulty that I could bring myself to admit the identity of the wan being before me with the companion of my early boyhood. Yet the character of his face had me with the companion of my early boyhood, yet the character of his face had been at all times remarkable. A cadaverousness of complexion, an eye large liquid, luminous beyond comparison, lips somehow thin and very pallid, but of a surprisingly beautiful curve, a nose of delicate Hebrew model, but with a breast of nostril, unusual and similar formations, a finely molded chin, speaking in the want of promise, of a want of moral energy, air of a more than web-like softness and tenuity. These features with an ordinate expansion above the regions of the temple made up altogether a countenance not easily to be forgotten. And now in the mere exaggeration of the prevailing character of these features, and the expression that were not the wind to convey, lay so much of charge that I doubted to whom I spoke. The now ghastly pallor, or even awed me. The silken hair, too, had been suffered to grow all unheaded, and as in wild growsome texture it floated rather than fell above the face. I could not even, with the effort, connect its arabesque expression with any kind of simple humanity. In the manner of my friend, I was at once struck with an incoherence, inconsistency. I soon found this to arise from a series of feeble and futile struggles to overcome a habitual trepidancy, an excessive nervous agitation for something of this nature. I had indeed been prepared, no less by his letter, that by reminiscing of certain boyish traits and by conclusions deducted from peculiar physical conformation and temperament, his actions were alternatively vicious and sullen. His voice varied rapidly from a tumultuous indecision, when the animal spirits seemed utterly in annoyance, to the species of energetic concession, that abrupt, weighty, and unhurried, and hollow-sounding enunciation that leaden, self-balanced, and perfectly modulated guttural utterance, which may be observed in the lost drunkard or the irreclaimable eater of opium during the periods of the most intense excitement. It was thus that he spoke of the object of my visit, of his earnest desire to see me, and of the solace he expressed me to afford him. He entered at some length into what he conceived to be the nature of his malady. It was, he said, a constitutional and a family evil, one for which he despaired to find a remedy, a mere nervous affection. He immediately added, which would undoubtedly soon pass off. It displays itself in a host of unnatural sensations. Some of these, as he detailed them, interested and bewildered me, although perhaps the terms and general manner of the narration had their weight. He suffered much from a morbid acuteness of the senses. The most insipid food was alone endurable. He could wear only garments of certain texture. The odors of all flowers were oppressive. His eyes were tortured by even a faint light, and there were but peculiar sounds, and these were stringed instruments which did not inspire him with horror. To an anomalous species of terror I found him a burdened slave. I shall perish, he said. I must perish in this deplorable folly. Thus and not otherwise shall I be lost. I dread the events of the future, not in themselves, but in their results. I shudder at the thought of any, even the most trivial incident, which may operate upon the intolerable agitation of soul. I have, indeed, no abhorrence of danger, except in its absolute effect and terror. In this unnerved and despicable condition, I feel that the period will sooner or later arrive when I must abandon life and reason together in some struggle with the grim phantasm, fear. I learned, moreover, at intervals and through broken and equivocal hints, another singular feature of this mental condition. He was enchained by certain superstitious impressions in regard to the dwelling which he tenanted, and whence for many years he had never ventured forth in regard to an influence whose superstitious force was conveyed in terms too shadowy here to be restated, an influence with some peculiarities in a mere form and substance of his family mansion had, by dint of long sutterance, he said, obtained over his spirit an effect which his physique of the grey walls and turrets, and of the dim tarn into which they looked down, had at length brought upon the morale of his existence. He admitted, however, although with hesitation, that much of the peculiar gloom which thus afflicted him could be traced to a more natural and far more palpable origin, to the severe and long-continued illness, indeed, to the evidently approaching dissolution of a tenderly beloved sister, his sole companion for long years, his last and only relative on earth. Her decease, he said, with a bitterness which I can never forget, would leave him hopeless and frail, at the last of the ancient race of the Ushers. While he spoke, the Lady Madeline, for some she called, passed through a remote portion of the apartment, and without having noticed my presence, disappeared. I regarded her with an astonishment not unmingled with dread, and yet I found it impossible to accept for such feelings. A sensation of stupor oppressed me as my eyes followed her retreating steps. When a door at length closed upon her, my glance sought instinctively and eagerly the countenance of the brother, but he had buried his face in his hands, and I could only perceive that a far more than ordinary veins had overspread the emaciated fingers, through which trickled many passionate tears. The disease of the Lady Madeline had long baffled the skill of her physicians. A settled apathy, a gradual wasting away of the person, a frequent although transient affections of a particular catabolical character were the unusual diagnosis. Hitherto, she had steadily borne up against the pressure of her malady, and had been taken herself finally to bed. But on the closing in of the evening of my arrival at the house, she succumbed, as her brother told me at night, with expression agitation, the protesting power of the destroyer, and I learned that the glimpse I had obtained of her persons would thus probably be the last I should obtain, that the lady, at least while living, would be seen by me no more. For several days ensuing, her name was unmentioned by either Usher or myself. During this period I was busied in earnest endeavors to alleviate the melancholy of my friend. We painted and read together, or I listened as if in a dream to the wild improvisations of a speaking guitar, and thus as a closer dream, and thus closer and still closer intimacy admitted me unreservedly to the recesses of spirit. The more bitterly did I perceive the brutality of all attempt at cheering a mind from which darkness and an inherent positive quality poured forth upon all objects of the moral and physical universe in one unceasing radiation of gloom. I shall ever bear about a memory of the many solemn hours I thus spent alone in the matter of the house of Usher, yet I shall fall in any attempt to convey an idea of the exact character of the studies or of the occupations in which he involved me or led me the way, as excited and lightly distempered, which he idly threw a superfluous luster over all. His long improvised dirges will ring ideality through a superfluous luster. With dirges will ring forever in my ears. Among other things, I had painfully in mind a certain singular perversion and amplification of the wild air of the last waltz of Von Weber, from the paintings over which the elaborate fancy brooded, and which grew touch by touch into vaguenesses at which I shuddered, the mere thrilling because I shuddered knowing not why, from which paintings, vivid as their images now are before me, I would in vain endeavor to induce more a small portion of which lie within the compass of merely written words. By the utter simplicity, by the nakedness of his designs, he arrested an overwalled attention. If ever Morrow painted an idea, the Morrow was Roderick Usher. for more at least in the circumstances then surrounding me, there arose out of the pure abstractions with the hypochondriac contrived to throw open his canvas an intensity of intolerable awe, no shadow of which I felt ever yet in the complication of the certainly growing yet too concrete reveries of Fuseli. One of the phantasmagoric conceptions of my friend, partaking not so rigidly of the spirit of abstraction, may be shadowed forth. Although feebly in words, a small picture presented the interior of an immensely long and rectangular vault of tunnel, with low walls, smooth white, and without interruption or device. Certain accessory points of the design served well to convey the idea that the excavation lay at the exceeding depth below the surface of the earth. No outlet was observed in any portion of his vast extent, and no torch or other inertial source of light was discernible, yet a flood of intense rays rolled throughout and bathed the whole in a ghastly and inappropriate splendor. I have just spoken of that morbid condition of the auditory nerve which rendered all music intolerable to the sufferer. With the exception of certain effects of stringed instruments, it was perhaps the narrow limits to which thus confined himself upon the guitar which gave birth, in great measure, to the fantastic character of his performances. But the fervid facility of this impromptu could not be accounted for. There must have been and were notes as well as the words of his wild fantasies, for he not unfrequently accompanied himself with rhymed verbal improvisations, the result of that intense mental collectiveness and concentration to which I have previously alluded, as observably only in particular moments of the highest artificial excitement. The words of one of these rhapsodies I have easily remembered. I was perhaps the more forcefully impressed with it is as he gave it, because under my mystic current of the meaning I fancied that I perceived, and for the first time a full consciousness on the part of Usher of the tottering of his lofty reasoning upon her throne. The verses, which were entitled The Haunted Palace, ran very nearly, if not accurately, thus. In the greenest of our valleys, by good angels tenanted, once a fair and stately place, radiant palace, reared its head in the monarch's thoughts' dominion. It stood there, never seraph spread a pinion over fabric half so fair. Banners yellow, glorious golden, on its roof did float and flow. This, and all this was the olden time long ago, and every gentle air that dallied in the sweet day along ramparts plumbed and pallid, a winged odor went away. Wanderers in the happy valley thought two luminous windows saw spirits moving musically to a lute's well-tuned law. Round around a throne were sitting Proserpine, in a state of glory well befitting the ruler of the realm was seen. And with pearl and ruby glowing was the fair palace door, through which came flowing, and sparkling evermore, a troop of echoes whose sweet duty was but to sing, and voices surpassing beauty, the wit and wisdom of their king. But evil things in robes of sorrow assail the monarch's high estate. Ah, let us mourn, for never morrow shall draw upon him. Desolate, and round about his house, the glory, the blushed and bloomed, is but a dim remembered story of the old time entombed. And travelers now within that valley, through the red leaden windows, see vast forms that move fantastically to a discordant melody, while like a rapid ghastly river through the pale door a hideous throng rush out forever, and laugh but smile no more. I remember that suggestion arising from the ballad led us into a train of thought wherein there became a manifestation of opinions of Usher's, which I mentioned not so much on account of his novelty, for other men have thought thus, as on account of pertinency for which he maintained it. This opinion in its general form was that of a sentence of all vegetable things, but in this disordered fantasy the idea had assumed a more daring character, trespassed under certain conditions upon the kingdom of inorganization. I lack words to. I lack words to express the full extent on the earnest abandon of his persuasion. The belief, however, was connected, as I previously hinted, with the grey stones of the home of the forefathers. The conditions of the sentence had been there. He imagined fulfilled in the method of collation of the stones, in the order of their arrangement, as well as that in many fungi which overspread them, in the decayed trees which stood around, above all, in the long undisturbed endurance of this arrangement, and its reduplication in the still waters of the tarn. Its evidence, the evidence of the sentence, was to be seen, he said, and I here stared as he spoke, in the gradual certain condensation of the atmosphere of their own about the waters and the walls. The result was discoverable, he added, in that silent yet important and terrible influence for which centuries had molded the destinies of his families, and which made him what I now saw him, what he was. Such opinions need no comment, and I will make none. Our books, the books which for years had formed no small portion of the mental existence of the invalid, were, as might be surprised, in strict keeping with the character of phantasm. We pored together over such works of the Ferveret of Charterouse, of Crisset, de Belfagor, of Machiavelli, the Heaven and Hell of Swedenborg, the Subterranean Voyage of Nicolas Klim, by Holmberg, the Chiromancy of Robert Flood, of Jean de Legene, and of de la Chambre, the Chamber into the Blue Distance of Tieck, and the City of Sun of Campanella. Our favorite volume was a small octavio edition of the Distorium Inquisitorium by the Dominican Emeric de Gione, and there were passages in the Pompeius Mela about the old African satires and epigibbons from which Usher would sit dreaming for hours. His chief delight, however, was found in the perusal of the exceedingly rare and curious book in quarto Gothic, the Manual of a Forgotten Church, the Vigilance Mutatorium Secundum, Chorium Escasile Maguntenance. I could not help thinking of the wild ritual of his work, and the probable influence upon the hypochondriac, which one evening, having informed me abruptly that the Lady Madeline was no more, he stated his intention of preserving her corpse for a fortnight, previously to his final interment, in one of the numerous vaults within the main walls of the building. The worldly reason, however, assigned for this singular proceeding was one which I did not feel at liberty to dispute. The brother had been led to his resolution, and so he told me, by consideration of the unusual character of the malady of the deceased, and of the certain obtrusive and eager inquiries on the part of his medical men, and all of the remote and exposed situation of the burial ground of the family. I will not deny that which I called upon the sinister countenance of the person whom I met upon the staircase on the day of my arrival at the house. I had no desire to oppose what I regarded as a beast, but a harmless and by no means unnatural precaution. At the request of Usher, I personally aided him into the arrangements for the temporary entombment, the body having been encoffined, with two alone bore it to rest. The vault in which we placed it, and which had been so long unopened that our torches, half smothered in its oppressive atmosphere, gave us little opportunity for investigation, was small, damp, and entirely without means of admission for light, lying at great depth immediately beneath that portioning of the building in which was my own sleeping apartment. It had been used apparently in remote feudal times for the worst purposes of a dungeon keep, and in later days as a palace of deposit for powder, or some highly combustible substance. As a portion of its floor and whole interior of a long archway through which we reached it were carefully sheathed upon copper. The door of massive iron had been long seemingly protected. Its immense weight caused an unusual sharp, getting sound as it moved upon its hinges. Having deposited our mournful burden upon trestles within the region of horror, we partially turned aside the yet unscrewed lid of the coffin and looked upon the face of the tenant. A striking similitude between the brother and sister now first arrested my attention, and Usher, divining Perhaps my thoughts murmured out some few words from which I leaned the deceased and himself had been twins, and that sympathies of a scarcely intelligible nature had always existed between them. Our glances, however, rested not long upon the dead, for we could not regard her unawed. Unweighed, the disease which had thus entombed the lady in the maternity of her youth had left us, as usual in the melodies of a strictly catapitical character, the mockery of a faint blush upon the bosom of the face, and the suspiciously lingering smile upon the lip which is so terrible in death. We replaced and screwed down the lid, and having secured the door of iron, made our way with toil into the scarcely lit, gloomy apartments of the upper portion of the house. And now some days of bitter grief have elapsed, and observable change came over the features of the mental disorder of my friend. His ordinary manner had vanished. His ordinary occupations were neglected or forgotten. He roamed from chamber to chamber with hurried, unequal, and objectless step. The parlor of his contingency had assumed, it's possible, a more ghastly hue, but the luminance of his eyes had utterly gone out. The once occasional huskiness of his tone was heard no more, and a tremulous quavet, as of extreme terror, habitually characterized his utterance. There were times, indeed, when I thought his unceasingly agitated mind was laboring with some oppressive secret to divulge, which he struggled for the necessary courage. At times, again, I obliged to resolve all into the mere inexplicable vagaries of madness, for I beheld him gazing upon vacancy for long hours, in an attitude of profoundest attention, as if listening to some imaginary sound. It was no wonder that his condition terrified, that it infected me. I felt creeping upon me, by slow yet certain degrees, the wild influences of his own fantastic yet impressive superstitions. It was especially upon retiring to bed late in the night of the 7th or 8th day after the placing of the Lady Madeline within the dungeon that I experienced the full power of such feelings. Sleep came not near my couch. While the hours waned and waned away, I struggled to reason off the nervousness which laid dominion over me. I endeavored to believe that much, if not all, of what I felt was due to the bewildering influence of the gloomy furniture of the room, of the dark and tattered tapestries which tortured, to the motion of the breath of the rising tempest away fitfully to and fro upon the walls, rustled uneasily about the decorations of the bed, but my efforts were fruitless. An irrepressible terror gradually pervaded my frame, and at length there sat upon my very heart an incubus of utterly causeless alarm. Shaking this off with a gasp and a struggle, I uplifted myself upon the pillows, and peering earnestly within the intense darkness of the chamber, hearkened, I know not why, except that an instinctive spirit prompted me, to certain low and indefinite sounds which came through the pause of the storm at long intervals, I knew not whence. Overpowered by an intense sentiment of horror, unaccountable yet unrenderable, I threw on my clothes with haste, for I felt that I should sleep no more during the night, and endeavored to arouse myself from the pitiable condition into which I had fallen. By pacing rapidly to and fro through the apartment, I had taken but few turns in the matter, when the light step on the adjoining staircase arrested my attention. I presently recognized it as that of Usher, and an instant afterward he rapped with a gentle touch at my door and entered, bearing a lamp. His countenance was, as usual, cadaverously wan, but moreover there was a species of mad hilarity in his eyes, an evident restrained hysteria in his whole demeanor. His air appalled me, but anything was preferable to the solitude which I had so long endured. I even welcomed his presence as a relief. "And you have not seen it," he said abruptly, after having stared about him for some moments in silence. "You have not seen it? But stay, you shall." Thus speaking, and having carefully shaded his lamp, he hurried to one of the casements and threw it freely upon the storm. The impetuous fury of the entering gust nearly lifted us from our feet. It was indeed a tempestuous yet sternly beautiful night, and one widely singular in its terror and its beauty. A whirlwind apparently collected its force in our vicinity. for there were frequent and violent alterations in the direction of the wind, in the exceeding density of the clouds, which hung so low as to press upon the turrets of the house. Did not prevent our perceiving of the lifelike velocity with which flew their carrying from all points against each other. Without passing away in the distance, I sat even there. Exceeding density did not prevent our perceiving this, yet we had no glimpse of the moon or stars, nor were there any flashing forth of the lightning, but the undersurface of the huge masses of agitated vapor, as well as the terrestrial objects immediately around us, were glowing in an unnatural light of a faintly luminous, indistinct, visible gaseous exhalation which hung above and enshrouded the mansion. You shall not behold this, said I, shuddering to Usher, as I led him with a gentle violence from the window to a seat. These appearances which bewilder you are merely electrical phenomena, not uncommon, or it may be that they have ghastly origin and rank miasma of the tarn. Let us close this casement. The air is chilling and dangerous to your frame. Here is one of your favorite romances. I will read, and you shall listen, and so we will pass away this terrible night together. The antique volume which I had taken up was The Mad Tryst of Sir Lancelot Canning, but I had called it a favorite of Usher's more in sad jest than in earnest, for in truth there is little in its uncouth, unimaginative perplexity which could have interest for the lofty and spiritual ideally of my friend. It was, however, the only book immediately at hand, and I indulged a vague hope for the excitement which now agitated the hypochondriac might find relief, for the history of mental disorder is full of similar anomalies. Even in the extremeness of the folly which I should read, could I have judged indeed by the wild, overstrained air of vivacity which she hearkened, or apparently hearkened, to the words of the tale. I might well have congratulated myself upon the success of my design. I had arrived at that well-known portion of the story, where enthralled, the hero of the tryst, having sought in vain for the peaceful admission into the dwelling of the hermit, proceeds to make good an entrance by force. Here, it will be remembered, the words of the narrative run thus. And Ethelred, who was by nature of a doughty heart, and who was now mighty, withal on account on the powerfulness of the wine which he had drunken, waited no longer to hold parley with the hermit, which in sooth was of the obstinate and maliceful turn, but feeling the rain upon his shoulders, and fearing the rising of the tempest, uplifted his mace outright, and with blows made quickly room in the plankings of the door for his gauntleted head, and now pulling through it sturdily, he so cracked and ripped and tore all asunder, that the nose of the dry and hollow-sounding wood alarmed and reverberated throughout the forest. All determination of the sentence I started, and for a moment paused, for it appeared to me, although I at once concluded that my excited fancy had derived me, it appeared to me that for some remote portion of the mansion there came indistinctively to my ears what might have been in its exact similarity of character, the echo, but a stifled and dull one certainly, of the very cracking and ripping sound which Sir Lancelot had so practically described. It was beyond doubt the coincidence alone which had arrested my attention, tore amid the rattling of the sashes of the casements and the ordinary comely noises of the still increasing storm. The sound in itself had nothing surely which had been interested or disturbed me. I continued the story. But the good champion Ethelred, now entering within the door, so wore in rage and amaze to perceive no signal of the maliceful hermit, but in the steed thereof a dragon of a scaly and prodigious demeanor, of a fiery tongue which safe in guard before a palace of gold, with a floor of silver. Upon the wall there hung a shield of shining brass, and the legend enwritten, Who entereth herein a conquering hath been, who slayeth the dragon, the shield he shall win. And Ethelred uplifted his mace and struck upon the head of the dragon, which fell before him, and gave up his pesty breath with a shriek so horrid and harsh, and withal so piercing, that Ethelred had feigned to close his ears with his hands against the dreadful noise of it, the like whereof was never before heard. Here again I paused abruptly, and now with a feeling of wild amazement,
For there could be no doubt whatever that in this instance I did actually hear, although from the direction it proceeded I found it impossible to say. A low and apparently distant but harsh, protracted, and most unusual screaming or grafting sound, the exact counterpart of which many fancy had conjured up from the dragon's unnatural shriek as described by the romancer. Oppressed as I certainly was upon the occurrence of the second and most extraordinary coincidence by a thousand conflicting sensations, in which wonder and extreme terror were predominant, I still retained sufficient presence of mind to avoid exciting by any observation the sensitive nervousness of my companion. I was by no means certain that he had noticed the sounds in question, although, assuredly, a strange alteration had during the last few minutes taken place in his demeanor. From a position fronting my own, he had gradually brought me his chair, as to sit with his face to the door of the chamber, and this I could but partially perceive his features, as though I saw his lips trembled as if it were murmuring inaudibly. His head had dropped upon his breast, yet I knew he was not asleep from the wide and rigid opening of the eye as I caught a glance of it in profile. The motion of his body, too, was all variance with this idea, for he rocked from side to side with a gentle yet constant and uniform sway. Having rapidly taken notice of all this, I resumed the narrative of Sir Lancelot, which thus proceeded. And now the champion, having escaped from the terrible fury of the dragon, bethinking himself of brazen shield and of breaking up at the enchantment which upon it, removed the carcass from out of the way before him and approached valorously over the silver pavement of the castle to where his shield went upon the wall, which in sooth tarred not his fault coming, but fell down at his feet upon the silver floor with a mighty, great, and terrible ringing sound. No sooner had these syllables passed my lips than, as if his shield of brass had indeed at that moment fallen heavily upon the floor of silver, I became aware of a distant, hollow, metallic, and clangorous yet apparently muffled reverberation. Completely unnerved, I leapt to my feet, but the measuring, rockling movement of Usher was undisturbed. I rushed to the chair in which he sat. His eyes were bent fixatedly upon him, and throughout his whole countenance there reigned a stony rigidity. But as I placed my hand upon his shoulders, there came a strong shudder over his whole person. A sickly smile quivered about his lips, and I saw that he spoke in a low, hurried, and gibbering murmur, as if unconscious of my presence. Bending closely over him, I at length drank at the hideous import of his words. Not hear it, yes, I hear it, and have heard it. Long, many minutes, many hours, many days have I heard it. Yet I dared not, oh, pity me, miserable witch that I am, I dared not speak. We have put her living in the tomb. Said I not that my senses were acute? I now tell you that I heard her first feeble moments in the hollow coffin. I heard them many days ago, yet I dared not speak. And now, tonight, Ethelred, the breaking of the hermit's door, and at the death cry of the dragon and the clangor of the shield, say rather the rendering of her coffin, and granting of the iron hinges of her prison, her struggles within the corporated archway of the vault. Oh, whither shall I fly? Will she not be here anon? Is she not hurrying to upbrand me for my haste? Have I not heard her footstep on the stair? Do I not distinguish with heavy and horrible beating of her heart? Madman! Here he sprang furiously to his feet and shrieked out his syllables, as if effort were grieving upon his soul. Madman, I tell you, that she stands without the door. As if superhuman energy of his utterance there had been fouled the potency of a spell, the huge antique panels to which the speaker pointed threw slowly back. Upon the instant, their ponderous and ebony jaws of it the words of rushing gust, but then without these doors there did stand the lofty and enshrouded figure of the Lady Madeline of Usher. There was blood upon her white robes, and the evidence of some bitter struggle upon every portion of her emaciated frame. For a moment she remained trembling and reeling to and fro upon the threshold, then with a low moaning cry fell heavily inward upon the person of her brother, and her violent and now final death agonies bore him to the floor, a corpse, and a victim to the terrors he had anticipated. From that chamber and from that mansion I fled aghast.
The storm was still abroad in all its wrath, and I found myself crossing the old causeway. Suddenly there shot along the path a wild light. I turned to see whence a gleam so unusual could have issued, for the vast house of the shadows were alone behind me. The radiance was that of the fool settling on the blood-ridden moon, which now shined vividly through the once barely discernible fissure, of which I had before spoken, and extending from the roof of the building as in zigzagging direction to the base. While I gazed, this fissure rapidly widened. There came a fierce breath of whirlwind. An entire orb of satellite burst at once upon my sight. My brain reeled as I saw the mighty walls rushing asunder. There was a long, tumultuous shouting, sound like the voice of 1,000 waters, and the deep and dank tarn at my feet closed suddenly and silently over the fragments of the House of Usher. An excellent reading for an excellent stream. Tales of Macrobee in Terror. But I feel this is a good spot to end our night of tales. For tomorrow, we save some more. As Poe once said, evermore. And in that spirit, I want to give shout-outs to both Death Shall Creep and Team Puffins for staying with me to read some Goosebumps as we transitioned into the fall of the House of Usher, which is a great story by Edgar Allan Poe. Now a very interesting Netflix original series. But yes, I might have something spookily related for tomorrow that I might have guests upon the stream. We'll have to come back and see if I have anything in store, but I might have a little stream. Otherwise, tonight was very fun. It set the tone on All Hallows Eve. I believe we are 24 minutes away from Best Coast time to Halloween. And also my voice from breaking. But, indeed, if you enjoyed another tale of reading Eggo, perhaps I can beseech you to join me again for other readings. For I did rather enjoy this night. It shall be one not long or not soon forgotten, and remembered by all, especially those who participated. But, again, tomorrow is Halloween, so I want to wish everyone a safe and joyous celebration tomorrow, whether you go out trick-or-treating, partying, partaking in your own endeavors or traditions, whether it be watching scary movies, gathering some candy, dressing up, or perhaps doing your own actions and activities of Macrobee. I wish you all a safe night. Rest knowing that tomorrow shall come. But on that note, I do want to say thank you, everyone in the stream. Your viewership and your support never goes unnoticed or taken for granted, so thank you again for hanging out with me. We shall do this again. It was very fun. And we'll see if I got anything for Halloween. But if I don't, I will definitely see everyone. If not Wednesday, Thursday, and after Thursday, this Sunday is my Power Rangers Tabletop Sunday stream, where my Rangers are going to have a spooktacular episode. So we're not quite done with the horror spookiness. We got one more, maybe two big things planned to close out the week, and then we head into Thanksgiving month. So that should be fun, all on its own. But until then, it's time for what my number one mod, who used to have a dad bod, Tim Kira, calls the Truman Show outro. So to everyone who would join me for some readings of tales of horror, suspense, dread. I look forward to reading more. The tales will be shared and to all those who care to listen. But I just want to say, no matter where you're watching at, I hope you all have a good morning, a good afternoon, a good evening, and good night. I am Eggo, the visual culturist, signing out, and I'm going to try to go to bed after what I just read. And I hope you all do the same. So hopefully I might see you all tomorrow for Halloween. And until then, take care. And have a fun day and night. Until next time, stream. Good night.